everyone, and welcome back to our virtual chat program. My name is Gulshan. I'm with American Center Tashkent, and I'm so excited today to introduce our speaker, Jack Anderson. Hi, Jack.
Hey, Gulshan, aloha.
Aloha. Jack Anderson is the director of the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement section at the U.S. Embassy in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. As a career member of the Foreign Service, Jack has spent the balance of his career in management of the U.S. embassies in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Poland, and Trinidad and Tobago, as well as director of the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement section at the U.S. Embassy in Yerevan. Mr. Anderson is originally from the state of Minnesota, and today he'll share with us his insights about Wikis, and we're so excited to hear about it. And I want to remind everyone, we're live on Facebook and YouTube, so if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section, and our speaker, Mr. Anderson, will answer them after the presentation. Jack, thank you so much for your time doing this chat for us. This is wonderful.
Great. Yeah, Gulshan, thanks so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be here today. Wikis for me are something, they're much more to me than just an interesting type of website to go to. I really think that they are a change in the way that we are collaborating, as society, and I'm happy to be here to talk to you about them today.
Thank you so much. Great. I'm pulling up the PowerPoint and leaving it up to you.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody. As Gulshan said, if you do have questions or comments or anything, I would love to see them. I've got my comments box open here. Oh, I already see from Samarkand and Joydbek. Great, guys. Appreciate any comments, questions that you have as I'm going through here. I'll try to keep an eye on it and respond to you guys in time. If we can make this interactive, all the better for me. One of the things that you're going to see throughout my presentation today is a little symbol in the bottom corner of my slides, which is the East-West Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. And I mark this because this is part of a research project that I did while serving as a senior fellow there. The State Department has lots of great opportunities for foreign service officers like myself. We get to go to great places like Tashkent and work on narcotics and law enforcement. And we have other tours actually domestically where we can join think tanks such as the East-West Center in Honolulu and do great research on things such as Wikis and the organization principle of the age of networked intelligence, which I'm going to be talking with you about today. So today I'm going to be talking about sort of the history of Wikis, where they came from, and how they work. And as I said, the Wikis are evidence of a fundamental change in the way that we are collaborating and organizing ourselves. And so I'm really interested to use that as a tool of how this change is happening and perhaps make some suggestions about what we might see in the future. One thing you're going to hear is about open world principles and a movement towards the age of networked intelligence that the Wikis are all part of. And I will get to that here shortly. But let's start with Wikis here. I'd like to introduce you to Ward Cunningham. So Ward Cunningham is a computer programmer from Indiana, and he worked in a bureaucracy, in a computer programming company, and he was looking for a way to exchange ideas between programmers that was a little easier. And so he had this idea with these cards. And on a card, you would have like an idea, and it would sort of lead to another idea, and you would have another card, and that would lead to another, and you would sort of be able to follow how these ideas moved through the company. The thing is, initially, this whole system was built on the assumption that if you wanted to make a link to another card, you would know what would be on the other card, and it would already exist. But what Ward Cunningham found is that when he talked to people about how ideas moved through the company, he found everybody was always talking about moving the company to someplace that there wasn't a card for. So Cunningham tweaked the program that he'd been working on to allow people to type the name of something into the program. And if a card didn't exist, the program made a new card where the person could add their idea. And this is the whole concept of the wiki. Ward Cunningham did this and started putting together this program in that. Ward Cunningham was trying to think of a name for the program, and he remembered a trip that he took to Hawaii. And if you arrive in Hawaii and you're at the airport there, they have a shuttle called the wikiwiki shuttle. So wiki is the Hawaiian word for quickly, and wikiwiki, that means, well, very quickly. And so he saw this idea and he thought, well, this is a great way to show how quickly we can move from idea to idea. And so in 1994, he named this project the WikiWiki Web, and it existed on his company network. Now, you all may remember in 1994, like, the internet didn't quite exist. I mean, it was there, but the World Wide Web was still not in existence. I know, I didn't log into the World Wide Web until like the first time for 1995. And so he was looking at this and thought that instead of just having this on his company network, he could put it on the World Wide Web, on the internet. And so he put it on there. The name was changed from WikiWiki Web to just the wiki. And it transformed the whole way that Ward Cunningham organized his work. Instead of information about ideas of his company that would normally have just been printed or static version, he created a way for everyone to contribute their ideas. And this is how the wiki was born. Now, to go on from that, I want to show you probably the most famous wiki, and that is Wikipedia. And Wikipedia was put together by another American entrepreneur by the name of Jimmy Wales. He was from Alabama, and he had this idea of having thousands of volunteers writing articles for an online encyclopedia in all languages. And, he said that initially when he started doing this, well, first of all, the project was not called Wikipedia, it was called Newpedia. And initially he found themselves in a very sort of top-down, structured, academic, old-fashioned way of writing these articles. And the problem was it just wasn't any fun for the volunteer writers, because there were lots of academic peer review committees. They would criticize the articles, they would give feedback. And he said it felt like handing in an essay in graduate school, and it was very intimidating to participate in. And so Newpedia struggled. It had a slow pace of growth, and wasn't really going anywhere until a colleague of Jimmy Wales by the name of Ben Kovitz, who's just a computer programming enthusiast, he suggested adopting the wiki model that Ward Cunningham had come up with, and that this would allow editors to contribute simultaneously and incrementally throughout the project, and that this would break Newpedia's bottleneck. Well, it worked. Since then, Wikipedia has grown and grown. It has millions of its own editors. It's one of the most popular websites in the world, and that. But Jimmy Wales still had some concerns about it. And there were sort of these concerns that I have, that problems that came up that needed solutions. One of the first problems was who can contribute to Wikipedia? The answer that they came up with was anyone. And anybody can contribute. You can go onto Wikipedia, you can create an account, you can start writing your own articles, you can correct other ones, and you can do all that. Once you do this, once you contribute, you are known as a Wikipedian. It can be very interesting, especially if you have some sort of a love for a certain topic or things like that. The next problem that they encountered were, okay, you've got a wiki out there on the web. The problem is you have some bad people, you have bad users. And you would have people that would have to be blocked, and you would have pages that would have to be protected in order to do this. So Wikipedia came up with a role called administrator. And administrators are people who are actually voted on by Wikipedians and are given an extra power on Wikipedia to block a user or to protect a page. So by doing that, they were able to mitigate that problem a little bit. The next problem they had was how to remove anything that was illegal or inappropriate, and also how to get rid of people with multiple accounts. So Wikipedia came up with this solution. They created two more roles, people that would be oversights or people that would be check users. And these were also made up of administrators. And remember, administrators were made up of Wikipedians. So it's a very sort of democratic process as far as who gets what role. And it's very much self-governed. So if you're an administrator, then you have the power to remove material, and you also have the power, if you're a check user, to delete people with multiple accounts. The system was working good. Still, it's all made up of volunteers, all made up of people that are elected sort of by other people, and very much in a sort of voluntary, community-based way of doing things. The last problem they had was how to resolve disputes between editors. Now, there is everything on Wikipedia, and some topics are sensitive and things like that. And so Wikipedia created an arbitration committee. So the arbitration committee is a panel of editors or Wikipedians who are elected. And if there is some sort of disagreement about what is factual, what isn't factual, who is right, who is wrong, the arbitration committee has the final say on what actually gets printed. I see a question here from DYB, do your best. Why is Wikipedia considered to be unreliable source for academic writing? Here's the thing. Wikipedia is, because of its nature, you will find higher quality writing and better material in academic journals that are peer reviewed and go through this rigorous structure. So the advantage of Wikipedia is not the quality, although for the most part, the quality is good enough for most of what everybody needs. But it does not have necessarily that peer review structure that you would find or being written by professional writers or academics or things like that. However, the advantage that Wikipedia has is the size of it and the accessibility of it. And so that's where you're sort of comparing the two worlds, and Wikipedia may be just a little more clunky and sometimes inaccurate than your traditional encyclopedia or academic journal. But given the volume of it and the size of it, and for most purposes, it's done wonders. And I think it's really taken people to sort of a higher level of knowledge sharing and collaboration. So the question that we have is, why would anybody contribute to Wikipedia? Everybody on Wikipedia is a volunteer. Nobody gets paid for this. And for this, I want to introduce the idea to you of cognitive surplus. This idea was developed by another American writer from Missouri. His name is Clay Shirky. And what Shirky says is people have non-financial motivations that come from a desire to have a sense of autonomy or competence. And this is referred to as cognitive surplus. In other words, people write these articles and contribute to it because it makes them feel good. It makes them feel like they're contributing something. You can see the result of it, and people like that, and people are willing to donate their time and are willing to do things without necessarily being compensated monetarily for it. So with regards to cognitive surplus, Shirky says you need two things. The first we've always had, and that is the world's free time and talents. But the second thing is what has changed, and this is what the wikis and internet have brought to us. And that is, we need a way to automate the management of information about what is going on. So with the advent of the internet, this allowed anyone to contribute data easily, and then this could be assembled together to provide information. Another word for this that you'll hear is crowdsourcing. And the whole cognitive surplus and collaboration and crowdsourcing are all part of this new collaborative type of organizing that is part of this age of network intelligence that I'm talking about. You will remember at the beginning when I started talking about Ward Cunningham, he worked in a bureaucracy. Now living in a collaborative environment is changing that, and that's been the exciting thing about wikis. So when we talk about wikis and we talk about collaboration, what we're talking about is this thing called an organization principle. And it's the way that people organize work in order to get things done. And you have to look at it from sort of a historical context. You know, it used to be that mankind was a bunch of hunter and gatherers and that. But the first real change was when people started farming and agrarian communities started to form. And these communities needed to have a way to organize themselves and make decisions and work together. And the way that they've done that, and the way that we still do it today very often, is through councils, which is people sitting around a table, sitting around a fire, sitting wherever, and discussing what is going on and hearing from everybody, and then coming up with decisions on how to deal with it. You know, this has worked well, you know, through sort of the agrarian age, but then people started to move on from that, and we began the age of industrialization. So when we started the age of industrialization, we had factories and big businesses in that, and you couldn't manage everything with just a council. You actually needed a sort of bureaucracy that existed that had a set, you know, rules and, you know, orders, way of things of doing and procedures so that work could get done. And so after the agrarian age, we had the industrial age. We moved from having these councils to having large bureaucracies in order to run organizations, run governments, and that. So what wikis have done is, instead of having bureaucracies where we have static standard operating procedures and printed materials and that, is they have created a way where everybody can collaborate into one document, and it gives people the opportunity to work together in much, much, much larger numbers. And if you look at the number of people that work on Wikipedia, volunteers, you will see that it's in the millions. And trying to organize an organization of 1 million people with a council or even with a bureaucracy would be very difficult to do. But it is possible because of wikis. So what this is all leading to is this age of network intelligence that I've talked about. The age of network intelligence, it's made up of 4 different principles. They're called open world principles. The first principle is how we organize ourselves. And that's what I've been talking about with wikis, how we're moving to collaboration. The second thing that's changing is how we trust each other. The third thing is how we share information. And the last thing is how we communicate. So we're moving into this. I have actually more talks, more research I've done on the other principles, but I'm not going to be able to get into it today. But with that, I have a short video, Gulshan, perhaps if you could pull up. And the video is sort of a musical representation of the transformation that I've been talking about as we move from this agrarian to industrial to networked intelligence age, and how we've moved from councils to bureaucracies and intelligence. So Gulshan's going to play that for us. And as you're watching it, I'd like you to see if you can try to pick out which each of these eras are that we're moving through and how things have changed. So Gulshan, ready when you are. See how we went to this Bible age here, and now we're in sort of the Renaissance and printed material, the industrial age. And now here comes the age of network intelligence. All digital and dynamic, distributed trust, collaboration, all sorts of things. So that is my musical representation of the transformation that is taking place here, that is being led here by things like wikis, the internet, which are changing the way that we're doing things. That is the end of my presentation here, and I'm happy to take questions and discuss things more with you.
Thank you so much, Jack. Wonderful video showing the transformation. Have you heard about Uzbekistan not letting people post wikis? So, because we have a question from Timur Narkuziyev. He said Uzbeki providers' IP addresses seem to have been banned from editing on Wikipedia. I guess they had some reasons for such a measure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have not heard that, Timur. And I know that there are certain things in Uzbekistan where it has been harder to use the internet here. I don't know the reasons for that, but it kind of concerns me. I think that being able to have access to wikis and to be able to share information is just such an important part of the country to be able to grow, and for the whole world to be able to share information and move ahead. So I would hope that maybe that's a temporary thing, and that maybe there will be ways to do that in the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I want to remind everyone it's time for your questions, so please put them in the comments, and we'll have them answered. Jack, a question to you. Have you ever created articles for Wikipedia? And if yes, what did you write about?
I got as far as creating an account. So I am on Wikipedia. I am a Wikipedian, but I have shied away from actually contributing to it. And I don't know if I can tell you why. I think that, frankly, I think that the main reason is a lot of the things that I'm interested in, there seems to be a lot of information already. And I'm not sure that, the stuff that I look at, if there's much I can improve on. But certainly if there was a small area where I had some expertise and thought it was of interest to people, I'd be willing to do that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. How often if you have this statistics, or I don't know, how often do American people turn to Wikipedia? And since you lived in Uzbekistan for a while, do you know if Uzbeks turn to Wikipedia very often?
Yeah, I tell you, very often when you have a question about something and you Google an answer, one of the first links that's going to come up is a Wikipedia article on it. And you can go there and you can read about it. In our house, we have a Google Home, which is a device where you can just ask questions and Google will find the answer for you. And so if you ask Google, lately we've been, we bought a new air fryer for Christmas, and we've been looking for recipes on how to cook stuff. And so we'll ask Google, hey, tell us a recipe for this or that. Maybe that's not the best example, but very often the Google Home, it'll give you a Wikipedia article and it will say, would you like more information about that? Or can we send that to your phone? And so I find really that Wikipedia is the default encyclopedia that everybody can go to, and because it's free, because everybody can contribute to it, it's just the easiest to access. And despite the information not being like 100%, for most things like recipes for our air fryer, it's good enough, and we go with that and we get the information we need.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. We have a question from Dania Hasanova. What do you think, what is the academic impact of Wikis?
I think mostly good. I think there's some drawbacks too. Maybe I'll talk about the drawbacks first, and then I'll talk about the good things. The sort of drawbacks of the wiki are that it makes it much easier to plagiarize things, to just go there and copy information, and to sort of not think for yourself. It also, I found that if you're an academic and you are writing on a certain topic, it used to be that you would go to the library and you would pull up some different journals and books on the topic you were interested in. You would read different points of view, and then you would form your own point of view on whatever topic it was, and then that's what you would write about. Today, what I've noticed is it's much easier to do that the other way around. You can come up with your opinion first, and then you can go to the internet or you can go to Wikis, and you can find articles and information to support your view. And that's kind of dangerous because we need to be looking at all sort of views, and we need to be thinking for ourselves about what is correct. So those are a couple of the drawbacks. But the thing that I think just really outweighs that is the availability and the volume of information. And if you are an academic and if you do use Wikis, one thing that is common and for the most part required on Wikipedia is you need to cite your sources. And you can go to Wikipedia, you can quickly find basic information about your topic, and then you can go to the bottom of the page and you can find the sources where there are actual articles, academic articles written by experts, then that you can read. And then you're not quoting Wikipedia, you're quoting an expert on the subject, which will make any argument, any paper, any research you have much stronger.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Dania says she meant it's very convenient to have Wiki when we need answers, but in our childhood we used to go to the libraries to find some information.
Yeah, and that's it. It's changed, and there is a danger there, and we need to be careful of that. But the overall benefit of it, I think is makes it worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. And there is a follow-up question. Do you think there are some other competitive platforms like Wikis? That's a great question.
Well, sort of the most competitive platform for like Wikipedia are just search engines. If you Google something or do that and look for topics, there are a lot of newspapers are online, and you can go to a newspaper and you can do queries like that to find information. But one thing to mention is I've mentioned Wikis, as a way, to use as an encyclopedia. But there are other ways of using it to help, like what Ward Cunningham was trying to do. He was just trying to organize sort of ideas for his company, and having a way to share information. And like within a business, you can create a wiki where everybody can contribute to it, and you can organize events, or you can put ideas together, or things like that. So encyclopedias, are not the only use for it, but there's other things too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Following up your idea of wiki for business. So when a company creates a wiki for themselves, are they putting it publicly, or they can use it internally? Or can they do like that some sections are restricted to a specific group of people? Are there such possibilities in Wikis, or it's just open to everyone?
Yeah, you can do it either way. The advantage of having it just within your company is, you're not sharing information outside your company. It depends on what you're working on. Maybe you have, some great invention or something like that, and you want to keep it within a circle of people. But really, the power of the wiki is being able to have lots of people contribute. And if you look, there was another example that I had here. I don't have the slide with me, but this also happened in Hawaii. The city and county of Honolulu was looking for a way to monitor their tsunami warning system. So if you live in Hawaii and you go around the island, they have these sirens stationed at different parts of the island. In the event of a tsunami, the sirens go off and everybody heads for high ground and gets out of there. So the problem with the sirens was that they needed a way to make sure they were working, and they needed to have people on the island be able to communicate, back with them to tell them whether or not the sirens are going off or not. Perfect solution, have a wiki. Multiple people can contribute to a wiki site where we have the sirens. They can do reports on whether it's going off, whether it's not. They can post information about where they're located and all sorts of things like that. So by putting up the wiki, it sort of solved the problem. The city of Honolulu didn't have to run around and have people here and there. They actually had people that adopted their own sirens and would report it voluntarily, which leads back to the concept of cognitive surplus, which Clay Shirky mentioned also. So, lots of uses, if you have the mind and can be a little creative.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Question from Aziz Yusuf. Jack, interesting topic. Question: if you had the power to make Wikipedia even better, what would you do? Thanks.
Wow. I'd have to think about that a little, Aziz. I think some of the things they're already doing, and this was in Jimmy Wales's vision. He wanted it to be in all different languages, and it's in a lot of languages. But I think to make it better, it needs to be in like every language. And the English Wikipedia is the biggest Wikipedia, but it's also in other languages too. And I think that the main thing is those languages need to keep growing, and there needs to be more and more. Is there an Uzbek Wikipedia? I'm not sure. I probably should have checked that before I came on here. I know there's a Russian one, so you can get it in Russian language. But, these are the types of things where, something like Wikipedia, where you rely on language as, the way to share information, it's very important to have it in multiple languages and lots of articles and lots of contributors.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Let's ask our viewers. Does anyone know if there is Wiki in Uzbek? Let us know in the comments, please, because it's something I don't know too. All right, next question from Muhammad Azim Live. Mr. Anderson, do you think that such an easy access to almost all information in the world demotivates young people from learning and memorizing topics?
I think it can, but I tell you what I've seen with young people is there is what is called going down the rabbit hole. And what happens, and I've done this on Wikipedia, is you read a Wikipedia article, and while you're reading the article, it has a link in it to some part of that article, maybe a person, maybe a similar topic, and you're like, yeah, well, I wonder, I want to know more about this person or this topic. So you click on that person or that topic, and then you're taken to that page. And then you read about that person and something they did or that topic, and then that has some other little twist to it. And you can, we call it going down the rabbit hole. You start clicking through and drilling down on this. And I think that, that is a very, some people may say they kind of wasted a lot of time doing it, but I actually think that it's a very, good cognitive exercise, and it really gets you thinking about the content that you're reading, and it gets young people looking for answers and gets them more interested in stuff. So I would argue, it's a great way to motivate people, if their curiosity and interest, is perked and they have a way to get more information. And there is an Uzbek Wikipedia. Thank you, Dania. That's good. And the more it grows and the more languages we have, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you for checking that. All right. So I don't see any questions so far. Let's give people some time. Until we get a question, Jack, do you know if there is a way to check how trustful the information that you read in Wikipedia is?
Yeah, thank you, Gulshan. They're they have started lately doing some fact checking, where they actually have fact checkers, in articles to do stuff. But I don't think that it's really taken off with Wikipedia, because Wikipedia already sort of had that role baked into it. You have your editors, your administrators, and people like that are in charge of sort of removing content that is wrong. But the thing is, as with anything, there's differences of opinions, there's differences of facts. And the only way that you can ever really be sure is to check with, a few different sources on stuff, and, think for yourself. Consider the source, consider, the material of what's being presented. I wouldn't say that, wikis always have the answer for you. You still need to have the mental capacity to be able to examine things and think for yourself as to what your truth is. So I would say that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And who runs this? This is an organization, right? And it's non-profit. How do they support themselves? Because probably they need some funding, right?
Yeah, I read about that, and I'm trying to remember now. There is a actual Wikipedia is part of a Wiki Foundation, and they get money. I don't want to say the wrong answer. I would have to look at that. I want to say charitable contributions. I think that's part of it, but I think there might be some other sources. But the reason it's hard to answer is, usually what you see is advertising, and with Wikipedia you don't. But the thing is, you don't need a lot of money to run it, because of the way it's structured and because of the number of volunteers that they have. So basically, Wikipedia has its sort of hardware that it runs on and its operating costs, and they have just like a few technicians that sort of monitor that. But otherwise, the cost of running it is considerably low.
Okay, thank you, Jack. It was so interesting to hear about this. That's actually something that always interested me, but now I know more, and we all know. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Great. Yeah, it was my pleasure being with you all, talking with everybody today. Yeah, thank you so much, and glad to have this opportunity to share with you.
Thank you so much. And everyone else, our next chat is Friday. We'll be talking about National Football League, so please join us at 3 p.m. All right. Thank you, Jack. And thanks, everyone, for wonderful questions.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.